The idea of this panel is based on the last year and a half or so of myself as a collector and someone who likes to create a lot of reviews, thinking about why is it I like toys still when I've gotten past the part where I just blindly buy things that are under a franchise, or I buy things because my friends think they're cool, or I buy things where I feel like I'm obligated to pick it up because it's new and interesting. And also reading a lot of discussions where people often butt heads because someone will say, easy example, this third-party masterpiece I like is perfect because the robot mode looks good on my shelf. And someone says, yeah, but the transformation sucks. And then the two parties sometimes have trouble finding a way through that impasse. So a lot of this panel is sort of about identifying more layered, to use a word, maybe more granular ideas about the subjective quality of toys and collectibles. And I'll say right up front, nothing about this panel is meant to be presented as expertise. And anything I'm saying, take it with as big a grain as you need to. Also, I wouldn't mind if this panel was a little bit discussionary. So if you do want to chime in, throw your hand up or just say something. This is definitely not meant to be a lecture. This is going to be a lot more of a conversation. Also, if everything gets set up the way that it hopefully does, I got a little video clip. I didn't want to do one at the fan media panel because I wasn't sure how we'd do for time. But last year I had a clip. Something I do with toys when they combine is I like to film a scene where they're kind of combining in a dramatic style. And I had this set called Unite Warriors Bruticus, where I needed to review it, and I really wanted to get the review done, and I thought the review would be the easy part, so I'd get the hard part done first, which is the scene where they all combine and yell in Japanese that I learned from anime. And I finished that in April, and I still haven't written a script for the review, because it turns out I just don't really want to write a script for a bunch of repaints, but I'm going to. One of them is new. We just need to sort all of that out. By the way, thank you for coming by to see this panel. I know it's the final hour for the most part of the dealer room. I'm guessing that means you guys already got all your stuff or you're broke. Can I get a holler from the broke people? Woo! Can I get a holler from all the totally rich people who just are too cool and already got all the things they want? Yeah. Transformation Menosaur sure looks real nice. Wish I had $800 or whatever. So Thinking Beyond the Buy is kind of the subtitle of this thing. And these slides, by the way, I kind of just slapped them together so you can read ahead, but don't. Or do, whatever. The goal of this panel, we're going to dig a little deeper into specifics on why we enjoy the toys we collect, maybe identify some collector types, and help me through my toy collector midlife crisis. So this is all, like I said before, this is all brainstorming. None of this is gospel. Let's have a panel adventure. Like I said, this is based on some thoughts I've been having for the last year and a half about why I still enjoy toys. And I've been thinking about it. I have friends who get out completely and are kind of just done. And I just don't feel that way. And so I'm trying to think, why don't I feel that way? There must be some kind of reason. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to subjective qualities. Yes?
There is a reason. You're never too old to have a nice childhood.
You are never too old to have a nice childhood. Yes?
Never too old to have fun.
And never too old to have fun. That's the kind of stuff I told myself at first, but then I was like, are these platitudes to make me feel better? Because I'm saying them to myself? So I wanted to think a little more. Sorry, go ahead.
You don't stop playing because you grow old because you stop playing.
You grow old because you stop playing. Or because you broke all your toys because you're too strong. So on the base level, I was thinking about base level ideas why I see people and myself liking toys. It's, I like this media. That toy looks cool. I want it. I bought it. And then sometimes I've shared my opinion on it in the designated place. Because most forums have a feedback forum where you're supposed to go and only there share your opinions on the toy. It's better for people like me who actually go to look at feedback, because if half of it's in the news forum post about the thing, it's inconvenient, man. But then I thought, how do we open up these 5 points a little bit more? So I like this media means that it's fandom driven. That toy looks cool. Then you're probably just an enthusiast for the medium of toys. I want it is that classic thrill of the hunt, which I know everyone can connect with on some level at some point in their life. Just the feeling of, I heard there's a Voyager Megatron at Square One Walmart. I'm getting on a bus doing the 90-minute trip out there. Oh, look, it's just a bunch of bumblebees. Oh. And then the I bought it part is that new toy smell, that phrase everyone's kind of joked about, and or purchase satisfaction. Like there is something, a moment you only get once, when you get that thing you've been looking for, you crack it open, it's completely new. You haven't messed with it, you haven't gotten your finger oils all over it, and it's like, this is the first time I'm clicking these joints. Only really happens once. And then the other part about, you know, sharing your opinions means subjective analysis and evaluation, which probably sounds more scientific than I meant it to. But I think that one way a lot of people tend to enjoy their figures once they've got them is thinking about why. Whether it's taking part in a discussion about the figure after the fact, making a review about it, or, you know, you can do both. So subjective qualities are kind of the crux of the slides I made. But this is thinking a bit more about like the reasons why people tend to like or dislike figures. Like there's visual appeal, you know, the sculpt and the paint job. And then a lot of these qualities I put a slash between, because originally when I wrote this in my head it was cleanliness versus sacrifices for other qualities. But I think a big point I wanted to make with this whole panel is that it's not really about these binary, you know, it's either clean or it made sacrifices for other qualities. Because if you look at enough figures, you can see it's a big gradient. It's not an on-off switch. There are some toys where it's like they're fairly clean, like SH Figuarts often are fairly clean, but you also can see all the joints. It's the fact that they deliver on all those joints in a way that doesn't have big gaps everywhere. So that's what the slashes are about. So for visual appeal, you've got cleanliness versus sacrifices for other qualities. Articulation is a huge one for toys because most figures are posable. But I'm also like one of those jerks who goes like, what's a Funko Pop? I was looking for a toy. Sorry, if anyone really likes Funko Pops. A lot of this actually came from a conversation I had with someone at a barbecue where they said, I love Funko Pops. And I was like, I am not going to challenge you on any of this, but I want to sit down with you and I want to kind of grill you a bit. Like, tell me why it is you enjoy these. And it was fascinating. I know it's an easy joke to make, like that Funko Pops are literally trash being sold in boxes, but like, there is something to them. They are successful. And I think there's stuff you can pull from that that can apply to yourself as a collector of other things. So in articulation, there's like numerical joint count, and there's also overall usefulness. You know, you can have 1 billion points of articulation, but if the arm still can't go higher than this, there's something to talk about there. Basic movement versus dynamic movement. Basic movement being like your old Star Wars figures. They can sit. Dynamic movement being like your Revoltex or something. They can thrust their pelvis. How many times can I do that and get away with it? Rule of 3? Don't give me this. Hidden engineering and obvious visibility. So did anyone see that Flame Toys drift out in the back? And did you guys check out the Iron Man figures that were sitting around there that are by the same design team? So that is a huge part of this, where it's not just an articulated figure, but those figures, and a reason why I'm a big fan of that group, Chemical Attack, they design articulation that is really usable, really dynamic and organic, but also sucks into the mass of the figure when it's not being used. And so that to me is a lot deeper than is it really articulated or not, because like, you know, there's a whole conversation to have there. And then there's intricacy of articulation, like is it really intricate? Are there a lot of pieces you're moving? And there's also smoothness. It can be intricate and smooth, but smoothness is sometimes a versus in that case. Smoothness is, I want to bend the leg. I bent the leg. On the other side of the coin, there are those toys where it's like Susano. Everyone tells me it's Susano-O, and I think that sounds crazy. That figure, you have to move a lot of armor bits all over the place just to move some of the leg and arm pieces, and that's not smooth to do. Subjective qualities too, the sequel, is stuff like tactile sensation. My friend Aaron loves this term that I thought of. I was listening to someone talk about coffee, and they were talking about the mouth feel. And I was like, well, that sounds like hipster scumbag talk. And then I was like, man, tactile sensation's a big part of toys. What if I call it hand feel? Because what else are you feeling with? And you know, some people have said that sounds dumb, so I was like, all right, what if we call it finger touch? And then they punched me in the face, and that's about it. Accessories are another big part of toys, and you know, often there's a thing about numerical count, but then there's another conversation to have about clean integration versus complicated integration. Easy example, face swaps. Some toys, if you want to swap the face, push down on the chin, put a new face in. A lot of third-party Transformer toys. You want to do a face swap. All right, unscrew the neck assembly, remove the head, unscrew the back of the head, open the helmet up. Now remove the 2 screws in the back of the eyeballs, open the head up, take the face out, put the new one in, do the whole process over again, and now Galvatron is smiling. I'm showing bias in some of these examples. I don't know if you guys can tell. So keep that in mind. And then packaging, I think, is a subjective quality, not for me, but MISB, mint and sealed box collectors, do exist, or mint in box collectors do exist. I'm like that for SH Fig Arts. And packaging can sometimes be bookshelf attractive. It can be a really nice presentation. Also, there's a thing about ease of removal. A lot of the Four Horsemen's figures that they release as an independent group are designed so you can just slide the card out, take the figure out of the tray, but then if you want to put it all back together, you put it all in the tray, slide the card back in. It's resealable. Also, have you guys seen those Transformers toys called Premiere Edition for The Last Night, the new movie? See how they're all in boxes? And then if you try to open them up, it's like cut the tape, all right, pull the box with the insert out, take the insert, put it over here, take this thing, now snip all these twist ties, and there's 3 layers of packaging I didn't even want. That's an ease of removal thing. Twist ties being a classic thing to talk about as well. We are Transformers fans here, right? Okay. A lot of that stuff I talked about applies to like action figures in general, but I think there is a whole nother level when you talk about something that can transform, which is part of why I think transforming robot toys are the coolest toys. Anyone agree with that? Cheap pop? No? Everyone hates Transformers? All right. So like a big part of Transformers is the magic effect. How did this turn into that? There is a group called X-Transbots, where they make a lot of masterpiece style Transformers, and their whole gig is they take the show model of the cartoon and make it turn into the show model of the alt mode, no matter what. If you have to explode the arm into 15 pieces to reshape it from a square thing into a round thing, it will do it, but it is kind of magic. And then there's also complexity, which is an enormous gradient of anything from like a one-step changer to G Creation's Ultra Maximus. It's an IDW-style Optimus Prime who literally explodes into 500 hinged sticks to turn from a robot into a truck. If you've ever seen their video, it's really cool to watch. I've never tried it, though. A little scared. And then there's smoothness. How fast can you transform it? That doesn't necessarily mean it's simple. And there's a particular feeling, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, when it's like, it's not an easy transformation, but it's so smooth and fun to do because it feels like there's no busy work. Like, it doesn't feel like you have to move 3 hinged pieces out of the way just to do the big cool motion. There are some toys like, Mastermind Creations Tarn, where it feels like all the fiddly work isn't there. It's just the big cool motions. And so transformation, I think, is one of those times where I think we as a fandom are talking about it way deeper than we were a long time ago, because once upon a time it was like, is this a shell former? Well, it's a shell former. And if it's not, all right, it's cool and simple. And it's like there's a swathe of things in between. But yeah, that's all like subjective qualities. Are there any other subjective qualities about toys you guys think about or that I didn't cover? Because yeah, go ahead.
I feel the art almost side of it could be like it fits like Flyos or like a Mechazone out there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, this was made by a guy, and it's like this is his vision. You're playing with it and actually be able to play with it on like vinyl and just play with it. I think that is a very big part of it, at least for me.
Absolutely. The whole thing of something that I think is still a lot more new now than it was before, something that's still growing thanks to stuff like 3D printing. The independent toy, absolutely, where you are following a creator first. Or you're following a designer. Like a lot of people got to know that a guy called Shogo Hasui worked on a lot of a certain era of Masterpiece Transformers. And a lot of people sort of noticed when he moved on to a different project after a run of Masterpiece cars. Yeah, independent toys, I think, are also a big part of the future of toys in general. But you're just, okay. Any other subjective qualities anyone tends to follow? Sorry, over here.
You touched on it a bit with like collecting for fandoms. How much it looks like a character you like Hasbro could release one, but if it doesn't look like the character I like, the silhouette's wrong or something, I'm off. Where if it looks really close to it, it's like, I will have you.
Absolutely. Representing the character properly and beyond just is like, I think silhouette is a really key word, because you can make something that looks like Thermidor from Robots in Disguise, but if all he can do is this, like the 3-step changer Bisque or whatever they put out, it's like, I guess it's Bisque, but to me Bisque is like this, right? Claws out. So I need the figure that can assume that, the silhouette that I remember. Sorry, in the back?
To touch back on box form, on the box form, shell formers, you know, we have to understand for that, like, as from my opinion, you know, shell forming can be cool and look good for a certain toys. Well, for instance, Cybertron line, there's a few kind of shell forming looking figures, but that's how the line worked. Versus the movie line, all the movie figures, you expect intricate engineering, so it looks like, hey, that car part was there, but now it's there on that figure, instead of, oh, it's all in the backpack. It's all this.
And I think that's a big part of thinking deeper about terms you see online all the time, because there's an easy thing of like, you know, shell former often is used in the negative and almost as like a broad strokes throwaway term of like, you know, you look at a toy where a third of the vehicle mode kind of turns into a backpack and you're like, ah, shell former. But I think writing it off like that, I used to do that, and I think it ends up being a bit of a mistake. Like, there are some shell formers that do cool things. This is one that I know not a lot of people agree on, so just hear me out before you throw vegetables. But in Age of Extinction, there was a Voyager Galvatron toy where basically the entire truck cab turns into a backpack and there's a robot folded up inside of it from the waist up, and in the back is kind of obviously some legs with wheels on them. The way that backpack forms from the cab, I thought was fascinating, because you aren't having to peel apart the cab and then like tab it together into some dumb looking thing. You pull the cab back, flip two things, and then just, and it accordions in one linked motion. And I was like, if you're gonna do a shell thing, and it's interesting like this where I don't have to do a lot of work, that's still kind of interesting, you know? I still don't like a shell approach as much, but it's that word I keep using, gradient, right? Like there's stuff in between. Sir, I saw you had your hand up before, and oh, okay. Any other subjective qualities? Or yeah, in the back there.
This isn't as common in Transformers, but I was like lights and sounds.
Lights and sounds, yeah. That's an oversight on my part. I should have put electronics in here, because for sure, you know, electronics are another thing that often are kind of a switch flipped for people. It's like, I just don't care about them. And as someone who often, you know, ends up wanting to take the batteries out because the thing says I am Optimus Prime every time I bump it while I'm transforming it, like, sometimes there are really cool ideas in lights and sounds that, like, if I think about it, I'm like, you know, in the 80s, I would have thought this was magic. You know, like the proliferation of the stuff they use in like Skylanders and Amiibos, you know, the wireless data transfer stuff, and the wireless power transfer stuff where you can wirelessly power an LED. Like, that's magic to me. There was Skylanders did it, and there was a Kamen Rider series called Wizard that did it, where it's like you put on this little toy ring, but you hold it in front of your crotch while you're wearing the belt, and like it transmits power into the ring, and the ring lights up, and it lights up more the closer you get to your waistline. It's really cool, you know. Just pull up your pants a bit so you're not going like, ah, look at that, my crotch is always back to crotches. Any other subjective qualities? Yes, sir.
Kind of what she was saying, how it captures the character specifically. The face sculpt, like, is huge. And
yes.
Because one of the things, I just recently picked up the reissue of Masterpiece Starscream MP11, and I think the single biggest downfall of that figure is that he only has one expression, and it's a really neutral, like, not Starscream face. Like a swappable face where he had like a smirk would have gone like a huge way to add value to that figure.
Or any jazz toy that is not able to smile.
Yes.
Yeah. I just picked up Generations toy J4ZZ. We're in Canada, and it's a really cool figure. And he's not like dour, but his only facial expression is kind of like, you know. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess Jazz is like not impressed right now, but I kind of wish he could also grin. And I talked about this actually in the toy review panel that we did earlier today. Like, the head sculpt is the focal point of a figure, of most any figure. And like Hot Toys, they will just release like shots of the portrait and go like, look, we got the portrait right. Or if they haven't got it right, I've seen them release promo shots of the figure and the face is blurred out because they don't want you to see the work in progress portrait, because that might turn your pre-order off. So yeah, absolutely. Like, identity is a huge part if you're picking up stuff as a fan of something, first and foremost. Yeah, over here.
Colors. Yeah. If the colors are even not like, you look at it and go, that doesn't look right. It should be. It's more like this on the with the character.
Well, I think color actually is almost a bigger thing because folks have color preference. And I think there are a lot of toys where if you fall into the old role to make it teal or orange, that almost kind of dictates like people who just buy stuff because it looks cool. You can take a toy that's like all warm colors, someone's like, I don't know. Then you do a repaint of it where it's in like cold blue and ice gray, and someone's like, yeah, it's badass. And like they might not even notice it's the same toy. We should probably move on. I'm just checking the time here into this collector type thing. But were there any other subjective qualities that are really jumping to mind while we're here?
Light piping.
Light piping is a very
It's a dying art.
it's a very Transformer-centric discussion to be having. I think light piping is actually really worth having a long conversation about because it has just as many pros as it has cons. And I really liked the brief time I felt like that at least third-party companies were providing a light pipe block and then a painted block. So it's like, all right, do you have the illumination to make this look cool? If you don't, your toy won't look dead. Yeah, absolutely. Light piping that's actually old-time toy magic, I think. Like the first time I saw that when I was a kid.
It just brings it to life that much more. Like, I bought the first movie RC, and I held it up to the light, and the eyes just glowed lights.
Yeah. So, and some of the Prime toys even had little irises sculpted on the inside of the light piping, and I was like, hello? Like I could see the toy looking into me,
It just
you know?
adds that much more to it. You're like, yeah, it just adds more.
All right, final one of the subjective qualities. Down in the back of the room, you got to yell though.
It's the thrill.
Oh, we had that already.
Oh,
You said the thrill. Okay, you there.
Good set of accessories.
We did have that too.
Oh, I walked in late, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, accessories are definitely a part of it and something expandable. Yes.
Diecast.
Diecast is a weird conversation to have. You want to get two people to fight. You either say, hey, who likes their steak medium or medium well? Or you say, hey, who likes diecast or no diecast? Over there. Oh, the weight. Yeah, that's the interesting thing is the weight of a figure. The reason behind it, I think, is fascinating. The original reason why toys were even made heavy was to make kids think it was literally a robot. And I think the main thing, there is a practical use to weight, which is primarily put it in the lower body mass so the toy doesn't fall over as easy, or to counterweight a backpack. But a lot of the conversation about weight, I think, comes down to a purely nostalgia-driven thing. I think it's actually it's a sparkly-eyed kind of thing for me. It's making you feel like a kid again, just the toy is now even heavier because you're an adult. And sometimes I think that almost can get in the way of stuff I would prefer, and that's why I keep going back to that word gradient. Because the downside of a lot of diecast is it's all painted, and then paint scratching becomes this thing. And I always wince at paint scratching. But let's go into some collector types, because I think we're at the half-hour mark. And once again, these are not all the collector types. I did not make the comprehensive list yet. But these are based mostly on what was in the previous slides, which means these also are going to entirely not touch on some of the really good ideas you guys have just brought up, unfortunately. But you have the set completionist. This goes right to Funko Pops. One of the main reasons I heard from folks that collect them, why they collect them, is you can create the full team, the full character cast, from, or the full series from like a series run by maybe an independent artist. So you have someone who loves the Avengers. What's an easy way to get the whole Avengers team? Buy a bunch of Funko Pops, because you can usually get them like buy two, get four free or something like that. But set completion is totally a high, like it's a little euphoria when you finish that set. You know, and when you're building up to finishing that set, you're looking at that one blank spot, and that pumps up the thrill of the hunt. You're like, oh man, I'm so close, I just need the red lion, and Voltron will stop saying we need the red lion every time I push the button. It's a personal anecdote. There's also the shelf displayer. I think this enters into a whole lot of collecting. In our own Transformers fandom, this seems to be one of the cruxes of a lot of masterpiece collecting, is at the end of the day, does the robot mode look good on a shelf with the rest of its relevant cast also in robot mode? And I think this is a key one, because if your primary inclination is shelf collecting, then that is going to overpower whether or not the transformation is fun. Something else to mention about these collector types. This is not about everyone is one of these. This is more about these are all fields in a Venn diagram. And it's like how much of these penetrate your personal pie chart. A lot of math, man, a lot of math. But yeah, shelf display and tactile-oriented collecting, which is kind of where I've identified myself to be, which is I really like stuff that just feels good and is fun to mess with. Those two don't necessarily always butt heads against each other, but when it comes to a Transformer that is trying to replicate a show model, those can butt together, because sometimes to pull off some of the nonsense of an 80s cartoon where like a square thing just goes and now it's a circle, like, you can't just push a button and have the square thing turn into a circle. Like that's going to be sometimes as crazy as what if we take the square thing and have it turn inside out into a circle. Look up some Studio Half-Eye stuff if you ever get the time. That's a design team in Japan. They took a robot, it's called Godanner. It's a big blue robot. And then they wanted to make one that could transform into when all his blue parts turn red. So literally every part of the robot can split open, flip inside out, and close back up again to change all the blue parts to red. There's also the character enthusiast, which I think we really touched on in a couple of your guys' points. So it's like, I buy every Transformer named Steamhammer. What? Any Steamhammer fans in the room? Woo.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah. But you know, there are clearly people who have this inclination. How many Bumblebee collectors are there? Tons. Here you go. How many people, hey, who collects Optimus Primes? Yeah. Right? Okay. Who collected Starscreams until the movies came out and suddenly there were 50 times as many toys called Starscream?
None of them right.
That happened to a friend of mine named Jeremy. But character enthusiasm, it's a lot like set completionism, I think, but I think it's very much its own thing because that can go even beyond toys. It can be like, here's my shelf of Kramer from Seinfeld. I bought the Hot Toys. I bought the Funko Pop. I also have a poster. Am I putting out a call for Hot Toys Kramer from Seinfeld? Maybe. And there's also the Gotta Catch 'Em All, which, as I put here, I said, where many begin but do not end. I think a lot of people who get into toy collecting, or even who just get into a new series, especially if it's a new series where maybe when you got into it, there are only 5 toys in it, you fall into this mindset of like, well, what if I just pick up everything? I think a lot of Transformers fans have gone through the other side of that now, where it started off with, well, I'll just pick up everything. And then eventually it was like, now when once maybe 25 Transformers came out a year, now like a couple hundred come out every year, and it's literally impossible.
The rabbit hole becomes a bottomless pit.
Yeah, rabbit hole becomes a bottomless pit, as we got here. Eventually, I think a lot of people start off just buying everything they see that looks cool, and then you taper down to either quitting or really focusing on what it is that you enjoy. And also, once you do that, it's a lot healthier for you. I don't think I had any more collector types. I'm going to flip to the next slide just to take a look. All right, this is the moving forwards one. Ignore that. Like we did with subjective qualities, were there any other collector types that you guys could think of or maybe have met? And I'm not trying to say, like, let's talk smack on Hot Wheels collectors. I mean, like, maybe with a positive bent, yes.
Not me, but my boyfriend. For him, it's not Gotta Catch 'Em All or anything. It's what is the best possible representation this character can get. If there's more than one, he does that.
Yes, I know a few collectors like that who they straight up say, I've seen it said, and I think it's fascinating because like my brain doesn't work this way because I'm so oriented towards each toy being like kind of a unique engineering entity. But I've talked to people who have said, yeah, there's this really cool third-party Trypticon that I think looks cool, and it looks like the one in the video game. There's also this really cool G1 Trypticon coming out in Titan's Return. The two of them don't look anything like each other, but they are both Trypticon. And because it is someone who just wants the best possible realization of this character, they got to decide between the two. And at that point, I've said, like, I actually can't help because, like, to me, that's apples and oranges. And I don't understand the mindset well enough to know how to even start to inform that decision. I think it is very respectable, though, because it means you can do a ton of critical thinking outside of whether or not these two things trying to look the same do it better or not. Because even with a G1 character, it can look like the cartoon or like the toy, you know, and trying to decide like which of those represents it best to you, I think is such a purely personal choice. It's fantastic as far as honing what it is you like about collecting these things. There's another one over there.
I was just going to comment on that mindset. I like that mindset. I think as an adult toy collector, I think a lot of that does also come down to not only do I perhaps want the best version of that guy, in comparison to perhaps how it scales with everything else, but also because perhaps I can only afford to buy one version of that guy.
Mm-hmm. I think what you just said there actually is kind of important because to me the statement of the best version is like a big treasure chest we could open up and like dig a few hours of talk about for each and every single person. But right there I think really said it for at least like your own personal taste. In a lot of Masterpiece stuff, there are a lot of folks for whom it's almost unspoken, I find in a lot of discussion, but like the best also means how best does it fit into my chosen sizing chart.
One of the examples that, like, I'm kind of new to a lot of this too, I've watched it for years, but Grimlock. a lot of people argue the Masterpiece Grimlock, although it is the official Grimlock, it's not big enough compared to the Masterpiece Optimus Prime. And there's little add-ons you get to give them they call them booties.
Yeah, I got the platform shoes. It looks real funny.
For the Fan Toys grinder, it seems to be one of the ones that, scale-wise, looks good side by side, but also if you compare it to the Masterpiece figure and even the aspects of the original character, it arguably could fit into that field for some people.
Yeah, and I think that's where I've had some of my favorite conversations after the part where we were punching each other in the face, where I was like you have easy example for right now this weekend. There's a whole bunch of very cartoon-oriented Stunticons coming out. But for my own taste, I'm infinitely more interested in the Transformation ones because I just feel like they are doing more that gets me excited. This is where some of this mindset originally came from, is like having that discussion of like me saying, Transformation ones I find more interesting, and someone else going, yeah, but the like DX9 ones look more like the cartoon and fit in better with this. And I'm like, in one way we're having a conversation, but when that's all we're saying, it's kind of like we're each shouting directly to the left of each other. And so it's sort of identifying like, all right, like the way it works in my head at least right now is I'm more tactile and engineering oriented, so that's where my focus is, whereas the person I'm talking to over here is way more interested in like a shelf display bot mode setup where it reminds them of the cartoon right down to the scale. So I can't start, like at some point you kind of also have to go like, all right, this is how we think. Hope you enjoy yours, hope you enjoy yours. All right, let's go on our way. This is what I do with my toys too. I have them have civil discussions and then combine and yell in Japanese. Yes, I was going somewhere with that and I forgot, but you put your hand up, so what are you gonna say?
There's sometimes people where they really like third-party toys and they just mostly go for that, or there's some people who want to stay as far away from third-party stuff as they can.
For sure. That's one of the conversations actually that I'm going to speak on my own behalf once again, so I'm not trying to lay this on anyone else. It's one of the conversations I've gotten the most tired of is like whether or not one should buy official or unofficial, because at the end of the day, it's not like anyone's going to go to someone else's house and go like, all right, let me inspect your toys, And there's also a certain aspect of it, there's this weird morality aspect, not the obvious one, which is whether or not you're directly supporting the franchise. There's also the renegade morality of like, well, I don't like what they're doing, so I'm supporting the renegade unofficial toys. End of the day, all of these companies, even the small ones, a company doesn't really, people in it care if you support them. The entity that's the company is never going to reward you for your moral support or like your loyalty. And it's hard to say that without sounding like I'm saying screw all the people who work on these things. So I love the people who work on these things. I just think of it in the grander company sense. I support the folks who work on Transformers a whole lot, and I hope they don't feel backstabbed by the fact that I also support a lot of people who work on unofficial stuff. But as far as like drawing a line in between, like I would usually just get two people who are more passionate to start arguing and then leave. Because like I've tried to care, and then I found I was inventing reasons why I cared. But the whole thing of morality in consumer product, I think it's an interesting discussion. I just feel like it also treads so close to the thing of like, where were all your plates made, buddy? Or is all your cutlery made? Did you get that? Is that local? You a local buyer? No, made in China. Get out. So yeah, I think it's a conversation worth having, but it's, as someone who's a person of passion, the morality of official versus unofficial when it comes to stuff that from the ground up is not literally duplicating a steel mold. And this is my weird line in the sand I draw. If you're not duplicating or stealing someone's steel molds, I think it's a conversation worth having a little bit of detachment from as far as like real emotional intent. Because eventually you're going to start going like, support the company I like. And that company's not going to run up there and go like, yeah, buddy, good job. Here, have some free toys. Trust me, I tried. I didn't. I'm too chicken. But yeah, any other collector types you guys have encountered or can think of? Or do you guys have any friends who have really weird focuses? Or, yeah, over here.
I was going to say continuity, like G1, only movie line or only East West, kind of you stay within it. So if you see a Prime, he's like, nah, it looks a little bit more like War for Cybertron, which kind of goes into the line continuity, then you won't get it. Kind of like that.
For sure. That's kind of like almost a subset, I think, of series completion, where it's like there are people who got into Transformers because they thought Prime looked awesome. That's how I know I'm old, is there are people who are like, well, my first Transformers was Prime. It's the one I'm the most passionate about. And I'm like, what about Beast Wars? Like, yeah, my dad watched it. Actually, we're not there yet. That would be really weird. But yeah, I think that especially for shows that had their own strong aesthetic, like it's only given that like you're gonna have, like myself, I've realized I own most of the toys that came out under animated in North America, which means I'm like a few toys away from finishing that set. And as someone who just talked about how he's so above those finishing sets, like I've literally bought activators because I'm like, well, I don't have that one yet. And you want to hear how bad it gets for me? I like animated a lot. I've almost finished the North American side, so I was like, hey, what if I start buying the entire Japanese run too? Because they all have metallic paint and they're completely different. And then that's when, like, if I'm talking to someone who has to share a living space, they just like take my head and just ram it into the door frame. And when I wake up, they're like, yeah, you were saying something about hot toys and how much you think that those things aren't articulate enough, and I don't know, you fainted. But yeah, series completion and series passion, I think, in something, Transformers is almost unique in just how many different kinds of series there are to hook into. G1 nostalgia being like its own gigantic whale that you could crawl all over and find like sub-barnacles living on, you know? Any other collector types over here?
I think another collector that is out there that I personally don't entirely understand but do at the same time is the knockoff collector, because they've been around for just whatever the quality is, people buy them, if not to make fun of them or like, look at this awesome Wei Zhang, whatever.
I'm fascinated by the current state of knockoffs for Transformers, because I was there back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, especially. I'd go to BotCon and I'd find the booth that had the weird rainbow-colored, blown-up, made out of soap bottle material, like Dinobot from Beast Wars, who said like Savagery Brave on the card, because I'm like, well, this is stupid. I'll buy it. And I felt like for a good 5-year period, like that stuff kind of faded away, like just silly knockoffs, or, you know, to me, this is another one of the weird lines in the sand that I have, is there is the knockoff where we're all talking and laughing, and then there's like the straight up duplicate, the counterfeit, the one that is actively trying to masquerade as a product that it is not. You could actually tear that open and apply that to third party if you want to talk about IP infringement. But I'm talking about, again, physical steel molds. Easy example being when those G1 mint and sealed box toys suddenly show up and you have to get someone to do like the side-by-side JFK assassination analysis of like the grid is 7 degrees to the left here. There are 8 grids of pure white on the G1, but only 8.5 on the counterfeit. So anyway, that aside, the fun part of knockoffs, I think, has come back in these final 10 minutes in the form of this really weird thing of these companies that try to apply, I guess you could call it like unofficial third-party company levels of fit and finish to what is still conceptually the weird, blown-up, slightly different color knockoff. It's fascinating to me because it's this pastiche of all these different things, like that Wei Zhang large Evasion Prime being the first one that really caught my eye. We blew up Evasion Prime. We also had a customizer redesign 30% of the toy, and we have produced it to a level of finish that you could probably apply to a mid-tier third-party company, and we had the designer frigging sign the box with Black Apple. It's like, I've seen people try to hard classify that somewhere between knockoff, third party, or straight up counterfeit. And I'm like, this thing is just living in a nebula in the middle of the sea, like whatever this thing is. But it's becoming so common now, I'm almost like, I want to think of some clever terminology for it, because like it is a counterfeit, it is a knockoff, but to take that, or like that big blown up Voyager movie Prime, or a movie Megatron that's, I think Chosen Prime had some of, you got that thing sitting there, and then you also take like those dinky, like we blew up a Titan Master to this big and made him green, and you put it next to it and say, those are the same. I'm kind of like, listen, like I know in a science book, I guess they are, but as far as our conversation, if you're going to tell me those are the same, then like this is a really boring and finished conversation. Because like, look at them, right? Here's a giant green vinyl Titan Master, and then like a big fancy painted diecast whatever Megatron. Again, that's one of those conversations I think is more fruitful and almost more interesting if you almost take a little level of detachment from it. Because it's another one where even more so, because there are straight up probably stolen steel molds involved, you can certainly feel bad about it. I will say I bought the real Voyager Megatron before I ordered the die-cast one-off Surtoys. And then I found out Surtoys actually takes a long time to ship stuff. So I'm still waiting. I saw like a whole bunch of them here, and I was like, yeah, well, mine came out to about $50. I just have to wait a month. Any other collector types you guys want to identify? We'll have one more right over here.
I do this, sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional, but mold completion.
Hey, Aaron. Over here, my friend Aaron. Aaron and I have this thing where if a transformer comes out and it's a mold we haven't experienced yet, we feel the need to buy it because it's not completionism. We just want to touch everything that ever was called a transformer. We don't need all the recolors. I hear you. I really hear you. I'll see, like, you know what I almost bought on Thursday? Squeaks. Because I'm like, yeah, well, I'm still gonna buy them. I'm gonna go and use one of those coupons to go friggin' pick up Squeaks because I messed with Aaron's and I.
You can be the coupon selected by Squeaks.
Yeah, I helped him.
You enabled him.
I did. It's fun. I like doing that to my friends. With toys, not cocaine. But yeah, like there are some toys where I'm just like, I don't think this really looks cool, but like I like the trick the wings do, and I haven't experienced it, and then I buy it. The way to do it, at least vaguely healthily, is at least wait till it's on sale. Don't be like me, like I ran out, go like, oh, Dark of the Moon Laserbeak, I don't have that yet. Transform it. All right. Oh yeah, that was like 18 bucks. Whoops. Let's move into this last slide, and then we'll continue some more discussions. That way we'll finish the slides. Moving forwards, these are some bullet points I thought of to finish things up. Consider how many collector types your personal Venn diagram intersects with. Don't try to classify yourself. I just think it's kind of fun to think about where it is I really fit in this big sea of identifiable collector typage. And like I said earlier, you are not one type. It's more how all these different liquids flow into the jar that is you. Metaphors. And enhance the value of your collection by trying to expand on which subjective qualities engage your deeper interests. So like, think about with these toys that you like, I think it's kind of fun, especially if you can't find anything new, to like take some toys off the shelf you kind of opened once and put there, and then go like, all right, like, what is it about this I kind of dug, you know? Like, and get more value out of the things you've already bought by like having this sort of sit down thinking time with them. That's if you even have the time to do that. You know, if you're a busy person and this is just a hobby you do on the side, like I'm not saying devote 2 hours a day to ruminating on your toys, you know? But like it's just an idea of how you can, you know, enjoy stuff a bit more. And like I said here, if you want to, you can enrich the hobby by thinking beyond simple good-bad binary values, you know, like the thing I said before, where people, even like me, I often will use shell former as a bit of a negative, and then I find something that is a shell former, but it does it in a way that I think is really cool, and I would have never experienced if I had just written it off like I was gonna. And also for discussing with fellow fans, if you think outside as simple like 0-1 binary qualitative statements, discussions are more fun, and often you also end up fighting with people less. And finally, and this is a big one about the monetary side of things and the emotional side of things, enjoy the company of what you have. If you are really stuck for money and this hot new thing came out and you really can't get it, like I said before, try to sit down with what you do have, see what you can pull out of it, what kind of fun you can have, like going maybe a bit deeper than you did before into that, like, you know, masterpiece Bumblebee that you transformed once and all your friends said it was cool and you just said what they said. You know, sit down and go like, what can I say about this thing? Anyway, the whole point of this panel, like I said, try to have a bit of a discussion about, you know, what it is to enjoy toys beyond just going out and buying them. To any of the other slides I had, or just to anything that may have come to you now, anyone else want to throw in a bullet point here and there, or just throw in a statement? Maybe, over here, yes.
It's a sort of defensive Funko Pops. I don't like.
Yes.
But the idea, I imagine, is that you can get things from different shows, different franchises at the same size, and the same scale, and the same style.
Absolutely. Funko Pops, to expand a bit on what I said before, they are designed to be bought en masse. Not necessarily hundreds of them, but they're designed so that you could just buy a Funko Pop of things you like, and if you put them all on the line, it would look pretty cool. There's a point where, personally, I would say they cross that line to also being like potato chips, where it's like, they just pop out of the ground, man. It's like they breed. It's like I went to 401 Games. Oh, look, a Funko Pop of a dragon, whatever. Come back the next day. Oh, look, like there's 8 Overwatch Funko Pops. Where'd those come from? Oh, and John Wick, huh? But yeah, any other thoughts from the crowd? Anyone want to throw out? Or are we finished a little early? Anyone just want to, Michelle, you want to plug something?
Chosen Prime, 5 things.
Wow, collusion. Well, I'll just say thanks for showing up for this panel. Like I said before, I really appreciate you guys came to like the panel during the final hour of the dealer room. I know that's a decision that's usually pretty easy to make, and the decision is usually, I'm gonna go to the dealer room. So I really appreciate having you guys here. I thought there'd be maybe 8 people. So thank you all for coming out for this and taking part in this discussion. And I hope it was interesting. You know, if you have any more ideas about this kind of stuff, talk with your fellow fans. Shoot me a Twitter message or something. I forgot to stream this one, but you know, hopefully that was recording.